Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching WION World is One with me, Raisha Sehgal. And this is Climate Tracker, your daily show that gives you an overall view of what's happening in the world of climate change, the events that affect us, and the efforts being made to counter the threat of global warming. Let's get you started. Our top focus at this hour. In yet another extreme weather event leading to loss of life, a deadly avalanche in the French Alps on Sunday has resulted in the death of at least 4 people and injured several others who were later escorted to a hospital. The news was confirmed by the Interior Minister of France, Gérald Darmanin. Just days earlier, a deadly avalanche in the northeastern state of Sikkim in India. A deadly avalanche rolled down the Ahmans Glacier, which is southwest of the resort town of Chamonix. The local radio station put the size of the avalanche at 1,000 meters. 2 helicopters were sent in to help in the search, the station said. French President Emmanuel Macron wrote on Twitter that rescue services were continuing to search for further casualties and that his thoughts were with the victims and their families. Now, beyond just lip service, one would hope that our governments make significant efforts to understand that extreme weather events will only become more frequent as the planet becomes warmer.
Qui est celui de l'eau et du rapport à la sécheresse. On a tous vécu l'été dernier une situation qui était absolument terrible. Je suis très heureux de retrouver ce beau département.
Let's go across to Brazil, that is too grappling with severe weather events. Thousands of people were evacuated after severe flooding and landslides were experienced in the northern states of the region. At least 6 people have lost their lives in the state of Maranhão and 3 in the state of Ceará, which is one of the poorest regions in the country. The emergency service has been declared in at least 53 cities and towns. The authorities in the state of Maranhão declared a state of emergency in response to the recent heavy rainfall. Around 800 households were displaced and dam failures resulted in flooding in 2 municipalities.
Tirar essa gente lá daquela área de risco, porque a gente tem criança, entendeu? E a gente corre muito risco mesmo. Lá alagou na nossa casa, né?
Estamos aqui com mais de 1.000 pessoas já dentro do acampamento. Uma tarefa muito árdua, muito difícil, mas nós contamos com a breve recuperação de toda essa situação.
The municipalities in Pará State declared an emergency on March 21st due to rising levels in the rivers. The local authorities in Marabá and more than 400 households were also displaced. The 2 rivers have been rising for some time in the state but reached dangerous levels over the last few days. Heavy rain caused a landslide in Ceará State on March 16th. At least 3 people had died and 15 homes were damaged. On March 20th, the authorities also warned that at least 26 dams in the state were at a capacity. To assess the severity of the situation in the regions, the Brazilian President Lula da Silva also visited the affected areas on Sunday. Surrounded by officials, da Silva visited a shelter where he talked with people displaced by the flooding that have submerged houses and streets.
Eu decidi vir aqui porque eu vou para a China na próxima terça-feira de manhã. Eu vou ficar 7 ou 8 dias fora e eu não poderia viajar para um outro país sem visitar os estados brasileiros que estão com problema de enchente. E o Maranhão é o estado que está numa situação mais difícil, apesar que o Ceará aqui perto também tem problema de enchente, mas o Maranhão é o estado que está com mais cidades, sabe, em situação de calamidade, situação de emergência.
According to Mariano's military fire brigade, almost 36,000 families have been affected by these floods and nearly 8,000 have been displaced or left without a home. Later this week, Brazil's Lula da Silva will be in Beijing. He will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping with the hope that the two leaders of two of the major global economies also make serious efforts to address the climate crisis. Now, after Earth witnessed second hottest March, the temperature of the world's ocean surface has now hit an all-time high, causing heat waves in the oceans across the globe. According to initial data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, causing marine heat waves worldwide. Scientists say that the average temperature at the ocean surface has been at a record 21.1 degrees Celsius since the beginning of April. The previous record was set at 21 degrees Celsius in the year 2016. Climate experts believe that the current trajectory will head off the charts and smash previous records. However, a counter-temperature wave is currently on the rise as well, following a historical pattern in the tropical Pacific climate. The El Nino pattern, expected to commence later this year, is set to fully reveal the effects of increased greenhouse gas emissions around the world. Scientists further speculate the risk of extreme weather conditions and a further increase in global heat records. The previous record for the hottest surface ocean temperatures coincided with the El Nino pattern that occurred between 2014 and 2016. This is according to the NOAA data. Studies also show that more than 90% of the extra heat on planet Earth is due to the consumption of fossil fuels and deforestation, warning that the world could reach the 1.5 degrees of warming for the very first time. However, experts consider 1.5 degrees of warming as a key tipping point, beyond which the chances of extreme flooding, drought, wildfires and food shortages could increase dramatically. The world has already seen around 1.2 degrees of warming as humans continue to burn fossil fuels and produce planet-heating pollution. And despite 3 years of cooling La Nina temperatures, they have soared to dangerous levels now. Europe saw its hottest summer in 2022 with temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius, and Pakistan and India have also been experiencing a searing heat wave, where parts of the country reached more than 49 degrees Celsius. Ultimately, whether the 1.5 degree threshold is hit or narrowly missed, it doesn't really matter, as it is the first time in human history that the value is within reach. And that's really the significant point right now. Whatever the exact level of heating, El Nino brings some of its impacts as well, including extreme temperatures, which are very likely to be unprecedented. Currently, the moderate to strong marine heat waves have been observed in several regions, such as the southern Indian Ocean, the South Atlantic of Northwest Africa, around New Zealand, off the northeast of Australia, and the west of Central America. Hotter oceans will increase the energy of storms and will also put ice sheets at risk of melting, which would push up global sea levels. The heat waves can also devastate marine wildlife and also destroy coral reefs in the coming few months. For more on this, we are now being joined live by Michael McFadden, who is a senior scientist with the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, sir. Now, world's oceans hit all-time high, and last month was recorded as the second warmest March. How do you think that the future looks like in terms of the Paris Agreement of reaching 1.5 degrees Celsius?
We have just come out of a 3-year La Nina event in the tropical Pacific. And so for the last 3 years, even though greenhouse gas concentrations have risen in the atmosphere, the rise in atmospheric temperatures has been tamped down by these very cold waters in the equatorial Pacific, which is a huge part of the world ocean. Now this La Nina is over, the temperatures in the ocean have returned to normal, but we're beginning to see the evidence of this increased amount of greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere. That's why temperatures are once again on the rise.
Right, Michael. Also tell us that how do you think that the warm ocean beds will affect the marine life? Which sea animals will be the most affected according to you?
the sensitivity to temperature is very species dependent. It depends on where you are, what time of year it is, what kind of animal or plant is involved. But generally, rising ocean temperatures push many species outside their comfort zone. And we know with coral bleaching, for example, if you temperatures rise too high for too long, the one-celled animals that live in their tissues are expelled, which causes them to lose their color and their food source. And if that bleaching goes on too long, corals will die. So this is the threat of rising global temperatures in the ocean, which we are seeing more and more of because of the inexorable rise in greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere.
Absolutely, Michael. While experts around the world are also claiming that we might breach the 1.5 degrees Celsius agreement plan, what do you think can be done of the ocean bodies to improve the situation a bit more?
Well, we're still somewhat away from the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold, so there's still time. We have some ways to go. So I think we have to keep reminding policymakers and decision makers and politicians that climate change is a real threat. Humans are causing it, and there's something we can do about it, and that's to decrease the amount of fossil fuel combustion and deforestation that's going on around the world, to bring our planet back into some form of equilibrium.
Right, Michael. Now, while El Niño periods help suppress temperatures across the vast tropical Pacific, according to you, which areas or regions will be the most affected at the moment?
Of course, when we talk about the global mean temperatures, we're talking about an average all over the world, but some places are affected more than others. The Arctic and the polar regions go through what's called polar amplification. These areas are rising faster than the global average. Land surfaces rise faster in terms of temperature than the ocean does, because the land has less of ability to store heat. So land and Arctic are the places we're going to see the temperatures rise the fastest.
Thank you, Michael, for joining us and sharing your insights with us. In other global news that we are tracking at this hour, no longer theoretical threat. Overfishing across the globe has wiped out species from areas where they once thrived. And one result of this is that it's taken off the table of the beloved culturally important dishes. In the Bahamas, the government officials and conservationists are working to save the conch, which is a marine snail that's central to the island nation's diet, economy and identity. Our next report tells you more. Take a look.
Conch, the sea snail that is a staple food for the people of the Bahamas, is being slowly wiped out by overfishing and could cease to be commercially viable in as little as 6 years. The overfishing challenges faced by Bahamians are mirrored in places like Senegal, where overfishing has taken away white grouper, a main ingredient in the national dish of Tiboudian, and the Philippines, where it has depleted small fish such as sardines that are used in kinilo, a raw dish similar to ceviche.
The older I get, I notice that conchs are now, you have to go more further and further for the conchs.
Bahamians are traveling further and further from population centers in pursuit of conch, and they're also turning to animals that have not yet had the opportunity to reproduce.
Queen conch is the main food species. According to government authorities and conservation agencies, its decline has been drastic. A 2011 survey of the Exuma Cays, a critical fishing area, found that the density of adult conch had declined by nearly 91% on the island's shelf over a 20-year period. And experts warned that the conch fishery could no longer be commercially viable in as little as 6 years. A scientist with Chicago's Shedd Aquarium, who has researched conch in the Bahamian waters, said one challenge the shellfish face is the lack of enforcement of existing laws, which restrict fishing by foreign vessels. Industrialized fishing fleets from other nations have overexploited some areas where conch grow, he added. Bahamian conch fishers point to such nearby nations as the Dominican Republic and Jamaica, which have stricter restrictions on conch fishing than the Bahamas. The warmer climate makes things worse. Climate change has caused unpredictable weather that has disrupted and damaged conch habitats and fishing grounds. The scientists say seagrass beds where conches gather in large grounds have been severely damaged by storms such as Hurricane Maria in 2017, leading to thinning herds. Another problem is growing acidification with the warming ocean, which damages conch shells, and changing sea temperatures have disrupted migration patterns that is likely to disrupt the reproductive season. In Senegal, fish and seafood represent more than 40% of animal protein intake in the diet. In Dakar, the capital and the largest city, a nutritionist said that the loss of grouper means more than just the loss of a national symbol. It has led to the loss of a key protein for the nation's residents.
These people today don't have the minimum to live, and they don't have the minimum nutrients, minimum protein, because they don't find fish. They don't have the means to buy fish.
The lack of grouper has also made other fish more expensive, leaving residents making the national dish of thiboudienne on a limited basis with smaller fish.
Today we are preparing thiboudienne, but the market didn't have any of the fish we prefer for it. There isn't any thiof. It's only the rich who can buy it. Now, it's only the small fish we can buy. That's all we can cook because there is none here.
The government in the Bahamas is exploring several ways to save conch. Part of the solution is more aggressive enforcement of existing laws, and the Bahamas National Trust, a non-profit that manages national parks, is working to get fishers tools to help them measure conches to ensure they are big enough to harvest. Reducing the fishery by half over the next 3 years, as a new proposal promises to do, is one way to potentially starve off the loss of conch. And pressure on conch could be reduced from outside. The US, the largest importer of conch from the Bahamas, is considering listing conch under the Endangered Species Act, which could halt imports into the country.
Meanwhile, on Sunday, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the International Big Cats Alliance, also called the IBCA. This was done to mark the 50th anniversary of India's Project Tiger. Prime Minister Modi also released the latest figures of the country's tiger population at the Karnataka State Open University in India's southern state. The IBCA aims to focus on protection and conservation of 7 major big cats of the world. That is tiger, lion, leopard, snow leopard, jaguar and cheetah. This is being done by curbing poaching and illegal wildlife trade. The 3-day mega event in Mysuru showcases India's tiger conservation success globally. This is being done to garner more political and public support for tiger conservation. A commemorative coin of ₹50 was also released by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to mark the completion of 50 years of Project Tiger. With a current population of 2,967, India is home to over 70% of the global wild tiger population. Tiger population in the country is increasing at an annual rate of 6% as well. Earlier, Prime Minister Modi had also received applause for his efforts to reintroduce the cheetah to the Indian wild. 8 cheetahs were brought in from Namibia, followed by another 12 that were brought in from South Africa and eased into Madhya Pradesh's Kunnu National Park. Now, volcanoes and earthquakes may not be connected to global warming. They're natural disasters that are unpredictable, and yet they tell us so much about a response to these disasters. In Colombia, there is a serious threat of a volcano eruption, and families living on the upper slopes of the Nevado del Ruiz volcano region are now being evacuated. Colombia's Geological Service has raised the alert level from yellow to orange, warning that an eruption bigger than any in the past 10 years could occur in the coming few days or even weeks. The authorities have warned of a probable eruption that could take place within days. The Colombian authorities now plan to evacuate people living within 15 kilometers of the volcano. The evacuation measures are preventive. The local authorities say that areas nearest to the volcano have poor communication and infrastructure. So at the moment, it is difficult to contact people there quickly in the event of an eruption.
Es una tarea compleja, nosotros insistiremos. Lo que sí quiero decirles es que evidentemente pues no podemos llegar a la fuerza a sacar a la gente de sus casas, pero a los niños sí vamos a reclamarlos que se los entreguen al bienestar familiar, porque tenemos los mecanismos legales para poner por encima de cualquier decisión la seguridad de los niños.
Now, around 40 families in the western Colombia's Caldas province will be evacuated first, and 500 additional families may eventually be asked to do the same. But some residents, including families who survived a devastating 1985 eruption by the volcano, which straddles the border between Tolama and Caldas provinces, say that they will not go.
Yo no le tengo miedo a eso ya. Porque cuando explotó me cogió. Y ahora no, pues ahora eso ya qué. Tiene que hacer ruido y claro, eso se sabe. Porque que tiene ese semejante roto. Cuando caen piedras allá, rocas, pues tiene que sonar. Erosionó lo que iba a erosionar. Yo creo que es rocas que caen allá y por eso se pone así. Pero si acaso de pronto por ahí por los ríos se crezcan algo, pero que vuelva a hacer erosión no creo. A mí me tocó verlo explotar y que nos caía piedra encima cuando estábamos en Entrevalles, encima de la casa, piedra forma pilas.
According to the National Disaster Management Agency, some 57,000 people live in the volcano's area of influence, which is spread across parts of 6 provinces. The Nevado del Ruiz volcano straddles the border between Colombia's Tolima and Caldas provinces. The authorities are also monitoring areas around rivers and those which could be prone to landslides in case of an eruption. They're also shoring up roads that would be used for evacuations. The precautionary measures seem justified given that the volcano caused Colombia's biggest natural disaster till date. That is when it erupted in the year 1985, burying entire settlements around it. Now, as the world celebrated Easter on Sunday, U.S. state of Florida saw an underwater Easter egg hunt. Scuba divers took to the waters of Key Largo to locate Easter eggs hidden by Scuba Easter Bunny. We'll leave you with this report as we call it a wrap in this edition of Global News. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One.